I've always been a light sleeper. It's not because I'm anxious or because I watch too many horror videos, though that might not help, but because of my job. I'm a paramedic in a small Ohio town. I work long night shifts, and even on my days off, my body just stays alert at night. That night, I'd gotten home late after a 14-hour shift. My girlfriend, Alyssa, had gone to her parents for the weekend, so it was just me and my dog, Max, a 3-year-old golden retriever who's usually braver than I am. It was one of those nights where the world feels too quiet. The kind of silence where even the hum of your refrigerator sounds loud. I fell asleep around midnight, and then, sometime after 2 a.m., I heard it. Knock. Not pounding, just deliberate. 3 slow knocks at my front door. I sat up immediately, my pulse jumping. Max lifted his head, ears perked, but he didn't bark, just stared toward the door. Now, I live on the edge of town, on a stretch of road that dead ends into a wooded area. We don't get random visitors, and especially not at this hour. I checked the time, 2:46 a.m. Another 3 knocks. This time, they were slower, heavier. Max started to growl, a low, rolling sound that vibrated through the room. I whispered, "Stay," and grabbed my flashlight from the nightstand. I didn't turn on any lights. Part of me didn't want whoever was outside to know I was awake. When I got to the living room, I peeked through the side window near the door. At first, I didn't see anyone. Then, in the faint light from my porch, I noticed a figure standing just beyond the steps. They weren't moving, just standing. The person was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing a hoodie pulled up over their head. They were facing my door, but their head was slightly bowed. I called out, trying to sound calm. "Can I help you?" No answer, just silence. Then, as if answering, the knocking started again, slower this time. Knock, knock, knock. Something about that rhythm, deliberate, measured, made my skin crawl. I flicked on the porch light. The bulb flickered, buzzed, then went out completely. That's when Max started barking like he'd gone rabid, snarling, snapping toward the door. I took a step back. My first thought was maybe someone needed help, car trouble or an accident, but my gut screamed otherwise. I wanted to grab my phone, but the screen didn't turn on. Dead, even though I'd plugged it in before sleeping. I backed away from the window and looked out again. The figure was gone, just like that. No footsteps, no sound. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. Footprints. Fresh, wet, muddy prints leading from the steps to my door, but none leading away. I swallowed hard and called out again, louder this time. "Look, if you need help, I'm calling the police." Still nothing. Then, from behind me, from the back door, came another set of 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. That door led out to my fenced backyard. No street access, no reason anyone should be back there. Max bolted toward the sound, barking furiously. My flashlight beam trembled as I followed him through the kitchen. When I reached the sliding glass door, I saw it, handprints. 3 smudged, wet handprints, as if someone had pressed their palms hard against the glass. I couldn't see beyond that. It was too dark. Then, slowly, a face emerged from the darkness on the other side of the glass. I stumbled backward, slamming into the counter. Max lunged at the glass, snarling, teeth bared. The person, or thing, didn't move. It just watched. Then it tilted its head, slowly, like it was studying me. And then it disappeared. Not walked away, just gone. I grabbed my car keys and Max's leash. I wasn't staying another second. I ran out the front door, straight to my truck. The entire street was empty, dead silent. I started the engine and floored it toward the main road. Only when I hit the first stoplight did I dare look back. There, at the very edge of the streetlight's reach, was that same figure standing in the middle of the road, head tilted, watching me leave. I didn't go home until sunrise. When I finally returned, exhausted and shaking, there were no footprints anymore. No handprints on the glass. But on my front door, smeared in what looked like mud or something darker, were 3 words. "You left me." I'm not someone who gets scared easily. I work long-haul trucking routes, driving from Idaho to Montana 3 times a week. Most of my life happens between rest stops, diner parking lots, and dark stretches of highway where your headlights are the only thing that exist in the world. People think long-distance drivers get used to the night. You don't. You just learn to live with it. This happened in 2021, right after the 4th of July. It was around 2:10 a.m. when I crossed into a desolate two-lane road called Highway 93. One of those places where your radio goes static and even GPS loses signal. That stretch of road has a nickname among drivers. We call it the dead strip because people have seen things there. The night was clear, no fog, no rain. Just the open road and my headlights slicing through the black. Then about 20 minutes in, I noticed something strange. A woman walking alone on the shoulder. She was barefoot. Her white dress was dirty, torn at the bottom, fluttering slightly in the wind. Her head was down, dark hair hiding her face. I slowed down, thinking maybe she'd been in an accident or her car broke down. I rolled down my window as I passed, shouting, "Hey, you okay?" She didn't respond, didn't even look up, just kept walking. Something about her posture, the way she moved, wasn't right. It was slow, uneven, like she was dragging her feet through thick mud. I pulled over about 50 yards ahead and grabbed my flashlight. When I got out, the air felt colder. Not cooler, colder, like stepping into a freezer. But when I turned my flashlight behind me, she was gone. I walked a few feet toward where she should have been. Nothing. Just the sound of wind brushing through the grass. I shook it off, got back into the cab, and kept driving. That's when I heard it. It came from behind me, inside the trailer. I told myself it was just cargo shifting, until it happened again, louder. Then my dashboard lights started to flicker. The GPS, which had been frozen, blinked once and showed something impossible. It said, "Passenger detected, seat 2. My stomach dropped. There's no seat 2 sensor on my truck. It's a single cab model. Still, I looked over. The passenger seat was empty, but the seatbelt strap was pulled tight like someone was sitting there. I couldn't breathe for a second. Then, from behind me, the faintest whisper, "You shouldn't have stopped." I slammed on the brakes so hard everything in the cabin shook. The whisper stopped. Silence. I turned on the dome light. Nothing there. The seatbelt hung loose again. I forced myself to calm down. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I'd imagined it. So I did what any trucker does when they get spooked. Turned the radio back on and focused on the road. 10 minutes later, I saw her again. Same woman. Same white dress. Still walking along the shoulder, but this time ahead of me. I hadn't seen any turnoffs, no driveways, no other cars. There was no possible way she could have gotten ahead of me. As I approached, she turned her head slowly toward the truck. For the first time, I saw her face. Her eyes were wide, pure white, no pupils. Her mouth hung open, but wasn't breathing. It was just open, like her jaw was locked in a silent scream. I swerved instinctively, nearly running off the road. When I looked back through my mirrors, she was gone again. I kept driving until I hit a rest stop about 40 miles later. The place was completely empty. No cars, no people. Just a single vending machine buzzing faintly by the bathrooms. I parked, stepped out, and sat on the curb to catch my breath. That's when I noticed muddy footprints leading from the back of my truck to the driver's side door. Bara footprints. I checked the trailer, even though I didn't want to. I opened the latch, swung the door wide. Empty, but it smelled damp, metallic like rain and rust. On the floor near the center was a single handprint. Small, delicate, pressed into the dust, and fresh. I slammed the door shut, got back in the cab, and started the engine. The clock on the dashboard flickered once, then froze again, this time reading 2:10 a.m. Exactly the same as when I'd first seen her. I drove straight through until daylight. When I reached the way station in Missoula, I told the attendant the short version. Said I'd seen a woman walking and maybe she was lost. He gave me a weird look and said, "Man, I don't know if you're joking, but you're not the first driver to say that. You were on 93, right? I nodded. He sighed and said, yeah. About 6 years ago, there was a wreck on that stretch. Woman in a white dress. Car flipped, caught fire before anyone got there. Some drivers swear she's still walking that road at night, trying to flag someone down. That night, when I finally parked at my motel, I noticed something sitting in my passenger seat. A small, folded paper, old, yellowed, damp at the edges. I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, written in faded ink, were 4 words. Thanks for the ride. I used to think ghosts were just stories until the night my daughter started talking to someone who wasn't there. It was the summer of 2019. My wife and I had just bought our first home, an older house built in the early 70s, tucked in a quiet cul-de-sac in Pennsylvania. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect for our little family. Our daughter, Emma, was 2 years old. We just moved her from sleeping in our room to her own nursery down the hall. That's when things got strange. The first week was fine until the third night. I woke up around 2:13 a.m. to the faint crackle of static coming from the baby monitor on my nightstand. At first, I figured it was interference, maybe from a neighbor's Wi-Fi or a truck's radio. But then, through the static, I heard something else. A voice. A man's voice. It was faint, low, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely there. Then I heard Emma's voice respond. I froze. I nudged my wife awake, whispering, "Do you hear that?" She blinked, confused, listening. Then the monitor crackled again, and clear as day, Emma said, "Good night, Mr. Black." My wife shot up instantly. What did she just say? I grabbed the monitor, turned the volume all the way up, but the voice was gone. Just the hum of static. We rushed to her room. When I opened the door, the room was ice cold, much colder than the rest of the house. Emma was lying down, eyes half open, mumbling something. I picked her up, whispering, "Hey, baby, who are you talking to?" She smiled drowsily and said, "The man with the hat." I checked every corner of that room, the closet under the crib behind the curtains. Nothing. But when I looked at the monitor again, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. In the playback thumbnail, right before I'd entered the room, there was a figure standing beside the crib. Tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The frame glitched the second I opened the door. I deleted the footage immediately. I didn't even want to look at it again. The next morning, I told myself it must have been a light reflection or a glitch from movement. Kids say weird things all the time. Imaginary friends, right? But that night, it happened again. Around 2:10 a.m., the baby monitor flickered on by itself. The screen showed Emma sitting up again, whispering to the corner of her room. I turned up the volume slowly. At first, I heard nothing but static, then a low voice answered. It was deep, gravelly, like someone dragging words through dirt. "Don't tell Daddy." I was halfway down the hallway before I realized I'd grabbed my baseball bat. When I opened the door, Emma stopped mid-sentence and stared at me. The cold hit me again, sharp, biting. The air smelled metallic like old pennies. I said, "Who are you talking to?" She pointed toward the closet and whispered, "He doesn't like when you ask." The closet door creaked slightly, even though I hadn't touched it. I yanked it open. Nothing there. But there was one thing that hadn't been there before. On the floor, in the dust, were 2 long footprints. Not bare feet, boots. Heavy, large, like work boots. That night, my wife and I brought Emma back into our room. We didn't sleep. By morning, I called the electrician, thinking maybe bad wiring was causing weird signals on the monitor. He checked everything. The wiring, outlets, even EM interference. Everything was normal. Then he looked uneasy and said, "You sure the system's new? Because these monitors aren't picking up radio signals anymore. Not since 2014. We replaced the entire monitor system that same day. New cameras, new receiver, completely different brand. And for a week, it was quiet. Until the 7th night. This time, we didn't hear anything on the monitor. But around 3 a.m., our smoke alarm went off, a single sharp beep. I checked the house. Nothing was wrong. But when I passed the nursery, I heard soft humming from inside. It was Emma's music box, the one we'd packed away days ago. It was open on the dresser, slowly turning by itself. Then I saw it, written faintly on the inside of the closet door, in crayon, in a shaky hand. "Good night, Mr. Black." Emma didn't even know how to write yet. We left the house that night, stayed with my brother until we could sell it. When the realtor came to inspect the property, she said something that still haunts me. She told us that 10 years before we bought the house, a man had lived there alone after losing his wife and baby daughter in a fire. He'd hung himself in that same nursery closet. His name? Daniel Black. If this gave you chills, double tap before midnight. And subscribe if you're brave enough to hear what's next.